Welcome back to Cohen's Garage. More Supra deconstruction today. We're going to remove a transmission, a steering rack, and a windshield, and try out some high quality Harbor Freight tools. First goal of the day will be to separate the engine and the transmission, so we can get to the clutch and start that process, as well as making the engine a little easier to handle, so we can start tearing down the engine a little bit, just for the sake of cleanup and replacement of parts that need replacing, including this guy here, which wraps all the way around the engine, and the other side, and that is what failed on us. It is a metal coolant line that goes from one side of the engine to the other, but it decides to go all the way around the engine, and lucky enough we have another engine that looks like it has one of these in good shape, so we'll change it out. Obviously, first order of getting the transmission off is removing the bolts. On the bottom side of the transmission, there's two brackets that kind of support the bell housing to the engine block where it does not bolt up directly. Those I needed to lift the engine up to get to. So once I removed those, just went ahead and set it back down on its super official tire holding stand. You know how many engines this tire has held at this point? Far too many. From far too many manufacturers. Turns out those Nitto Infos were pretty crappy autocross tires. Pretty good engine holding tires. I'm a little curious to get into this transmission and clutch assembly though, because I have no idea if this has ever been done in the car's history. The only thing to report before this was that the clutch felt a little chattery, but it didn't necessarily feel like it was slipping to me. So we might be looking at a completely original clutch. We might be looking at a pretty good clutch that didn't need replacing. Who knows? Hope you got a rear main seal. Actually, I don't even know if it's the rear main seal. I think this cam cap is leaking. Because look at all the... It ran all the way down here. It's all in here. I don't know if that's from previous valve cover leakage or from the midsection leakage or if it's from this.
I mean, it's not like too wet.
It's pretty recent down here, like this. I don't know.
That could also be from when we did the cam carriers.
Right.
We didn't torque them down properly the first time they started leaking, so we had to go back and torque them again.
Possibly.
So, I don't know.
Possibly. So pulling the clutch disc off, it looks pretty good actually. There's a bunch of wear on the teeth of the pressure plate, and the flywheel and pressure plate surfaces look pretty good actually, not too scored. So it's possible the chattering clutch feeling that I'm getting is to do with throwout bearing wear hitting the teeth of the pressure plate. So all of that's getting replaced, new throwout bearing, new pilot bearing, new clutch disc, and new pressure plate. That will all be going in, and a resurfaced flywheel. We'll take that off and have it resurfaced. There is also a rear main seal under this that we're going to go ahead and redo while we have the access. But finding this rear of the engine oil leak will be important. Make sure that replacing those cam tower seals actually did solve this problem. We'll have to investigate further. In fact, if anyone out there knows where I can find the rear cam cover seal O-rings, that would be fantastic. I don't want to pull that apart unless I know I have the part to replace it. Those are under those two triangle rotary looking things on the back of the head. So now to tackle that steering rack. Today we're going to try and remove the old one. Should be pretty simple. Pull the front wheels off, get the front end in the air, and then we'll have access to undo the inner to outer tie rod connection. I don't know that we ever did the outers, but I know we've done the inner tie rods, so removing them shouldn't be too bad. There she goes.
Let's get that loose.
They really don't seem that bad, but while we're here.
The original.
You need me to hold the steering wheel?
I need not another deep socket.
Here we're disconnecting the steering column from the steering rack. What do you mean?
Like, I can't pry because it just moves back and forth.
Well, you need to be prying up, really.
No, I want to separate it
Oh.
more. Is that, are you playing around with the steering rack, this on the other Supra?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all not there, I definitely need to separate it more.
Okay.
What if I just go all the way one way?
Do you think that would be the easiest way to install it? Turn all the way to one way and spline it that way?
It seems logical. Have to consult the internet. They know best.
Don't ever say that again. In fact, I'm highly insulted right now.
But you're on the internet. This is gonna be on the internet. Which now I'm saying we know best. We don't know best.
We get it. The diesel. So you see where that joint is in the middle?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that actually collapses.
Yeah.
And it pushes in, just in case there's a big front-end collision. It doesn't shoot the steering column into your chest.
The way I found that out is because on a Beetle, that this steering is like, it's hollow in the center, and it's like a spiral, on the, like a spiral cage.
Oh, yeah. So
people are like, this isn't decorative, this is stock. People are like, that's why it completely compresses.
it really wants to go, but it really doesn't want to go. It went. So the only two lines that are coming off are the one there. It's got a bolt on it. The one on the back for the green cap is the return. It's already got boots. It's got inners. It is ready to go. It's life on the camera. You either live long enough to pay off your snap-on thing, or you die trying.
But why do y'all go with the snap-on stuff?
Because the maintenance, because they roll around, and if you get something wrong, they just come to you and you can get it fixed. After what I'm sure was a riveting discussion on why Snap-on owns the soul of nearly every mechanic, it's time for me to climb into the engine bay and remove the 4 bolts that hold the caps that hold the steering rack in place. At this juncture, I would like to take a moment to say, Jonathan, you have 2 air impact guns. Bring one of them over. So we may need to take this nut out because I think it joins the 2 lines to the ones that are staying. So 2 10 mils. So this one's got like a retention tab in it. That would make it even more fun to do with the engine in.
Yeah.
Okay, so the retention tab one is obvious because it's only on one side. Rack. Rack is out. That means my prison sentence in the engine bay is over. We're not going to go ahead and install the new rack until we get new outer tie rods to put in, so we can do it all at once. We also have new rack bushings and new sway bar end links and bushings to do while we're in that phase. But now for a new phase, and that is removing the windshield. Something I've never done before, but I've seen plenty of times done on TV. It looks pretty freaking easy, doesn't it? Well, we're going to start with removing the cowl piece and the windshield wiper arms. Actually, flip that order. The windshield wiper arms and then the cowl piece. There's a bunch of different ways you could remove a windshield. Full roadkill, just start kicking in it from the inside. Since this windshield is trashed anyway, we have no desires to save it. But I would like to do it in at least, as few pieces as possible. So we're going to use a Harbor Freight quality that is literally from Harbor Freight windshield removal tool to try and aid this process. But first, out needs to come the dashboard, mainly because we don't want it to be damaged either through the windshield removal tool or in the future when we're welding, so now seems as good a time as any, being kind of methodical with that process because all of these interior panels are extremely old and brittle, and we want to damage as few of them as possible. Just in removing the dash, I'm starting to visually see that maybe this rust problem in the front end is a little bit more severe than I had originally anticipated. In general, whenever you remove parts and you start to see daylight from places where you didn't expect to see daylight, that's not the best sign in the world. So that rust hole in the cowl area is actually not just a rust hole in the cowl area, it goes clear under the windshield and through to the inside. So there's there's actually rust beyond the windshield. This is going to be probably the most intensive repair, at least of the repairs that I know we have to do now. Soldiering right along though, Jonathan's going to knock the plastic tabs out of the channel that used to hold the trim, and somewhere during this process, either he drops some acid and starts freaking out, or there's also the possibility that one of those plastic tabs decided to smack him right in the face. Alright, well, I guess he's putting a face shield on, so we'll go with the plastic tab hitting him in the face theory for now. Alright, now getting into the nitty-gritty of it. Starting to use this tool to remove the windshield. I'm a little worried to begin with the fact that this is a Harbor Freight tool. In general, my stance is if you have a job that is known to be difficult to do, that's not the place where you should be getting Harbor Freight tools. That's usually the place where you should be finding the tool that the pros or people that do this every day do. But knowing that, we'll see if it works. In theory, it seems like a good idea. The thing that's making me worried is not the poker bit that will push the cable through. The cable just goes into the end of that poker bit and should slide under the rubber. The part that is concerning to me is in the instructions of this kit, it uses the word cable a bunch. And it says to pull the cable back and forth. That would be great if they actually supplied you cable. Like braided cable. This is not. What they supply you is basically square baling wire, and I am not a structural engineer, but I know for a fact that this kind of wire nowhere near the breaking strength of cable, and it has no ridges. It doesn't have anything to saw away at the rubber, so that's a little concerning. So after that failure, tried something a little different and using just one person pulling back and forth. Got a good edge on it underneath of the windshield, and that seemed to be the ticket, getting it, sawing back and forth under the windshield. At this point, it actually looks like this tool, despite its Harbor Freightness, might actually work out for us. But then in comes the areas where there's tabs along the cowl, and then there's all these tabs that hold the trim in, and that's where things start to get tricky. Pretty much at any point where the cable reaches any resistance at all, it just instantly snaps. I really think I used the wrong word there, this wire. I really think if it was cable, this would have been an awesome method and it would have worked fine, but it's already after 10 p.m. Obviously, Jonathan's already starting to lose his mind. There's nowhere to get any cable or anything like that, so we're just trudging right along and just going to try different angles of attack to get as much of the windshield unglued as possible. In theory, in my mind, if we have at least, I would say, 80% of the windshield unglued, then we can probably just push it out and cut out the remaining. The A-pillars seem to be the area of most concern. Anytime we get the wire through there, it just snags on the lip of the A-pillar and pretty much instantly snaps the wire. Much in the way that we had pretty good success on the bottom, the top was actually pretty successful as well. We fed it through the bottom to the top to try and give it a little bit more leverage and hope not to snap the wire, and it seemed to work pretty well. So at this point, I would say we have about 40 to 50% of the windshield unglued. Really seemed like maybe trying the same thing from A-pillar to A-pillar would work, but no, there's just no hope for it. Anytime you try and feed it around the A-pillar, it just doesn't have enough braking strength. It just instantly breaks it. If it was a cable that could saw through it, maybe it would have happened, but at this point, things are about to get a lot less technical around here and a lot more physical. That was pretty much the final straw. We were about to pack up and just call it a night, but for some reason, things just started happening, and the mentality of let's use the proper tools and procedure to remove this windshield, there was no major discussion or decision. It just started happening. So now we're just going to start attacking this thing with putty knives, utility blades, and my feet. So I'm pretty much in there applying pressure the whole time, just waiting for the moment that this windshield shatters into 1,000 billion pieces and comes raining down in on me. This is laminated glass, that shouldn't happen, but in my mind, that's what was going to happen the whole time. Final cut along the passenger side A-pillar, and it was completely free. No major, push out moment like I was kind of hoping for, but we can now calmly take the windshield off to the side, never to be seen again. Actually, what the heck am I going to do with this windshield now? I just now thought about this, recording this voiceover. Huh. Anybody want a really cool souvenir from a 1985 Supra? Anybody? Warning, what you're about to see contains graphic rust content. So I knew that this area here in the firewall, or the cowl, was pretty bad. What I didn't realize is how much it went under the windshield. As you saw earlier, the windshield actually had a gap underneath of it, which let water into the car, and rusted even back into where the dashboard support is. None of this is a big deal. None of this is anything but redundant structure. The part that's a big deal is right here. From the here to here, this is the area that the windshield actually glues down onto. So reconstructing that area will be the trickiest part of this repair. This is the only section that absolutely needs to retain the factory profile. It needs to be just as smooth as it would have been here from the factory so that the windshield will glue down correctly and not leak in the future. The rest of it, all of this, that just needs to be covered. Any metal paneling will do. We'll try to match it as best as possible to stock, but honestly it doesn't matter, and it's under a cowl piece, so will never be seen. Same goes for right here. So between here to here should be covered, and needs to be, so that leaves and stuff don't get down into the cowl area. We got a little rust hole there under one of the clips. And then for the front, I think that's it for the rust on the front. Down in here, there's a little bit of surface rust starting to show, so this will all need to be wire brushed. And who knows what we might find underneath the rubber seal. That still needs to be scraped off of there. But then we start to go up the A-pillar. This is the only little piece of glass that remained, so despite how ugly our removal procedure was, we at least didn't chip too much of the glass off. Up through here, here's our hole in an A-pillar, right there. And again, we may find more of this as we go. And then up at the top, I knew there would be holes in here. One right here. Seems to be wherever the plastic clips for the factory gutter were rusted out. And then for the known areas, this is the biggest one on the top for sure. This is a pretty large rust hole. That's actually going to need a significant repair. It's nice that it's hidden, but it's going to have to be very well sealed so that we don't have rust issues in the future. And it'll be tricky. It'll be something. It's going to be pretty interesting. And that's just what we see right now. There could be more once we get all the seal off, but that will be for another day. That'll do it for this time on Cone's Garage. Next time, probably going to do just a little bit more deconstruction, but we're getting close to starting to put stuff back together.